The town of Caldwell Crossing sat in the middle of Kansas in 1879, a main street of packed dirt, a general store, a livery stable, a church with a bell that hadn't rung in 2 years, and a saloon called the Dusty Boot that did more business than everything else combined. Above the jail door hung a sign that read, "Sheriff's Office," and inside, most mornings, sat the man himself. His name was Earl Briggs. He was 56 years old, with a thick gray mustache, a weathered face the color of old saddle leather, and a slight stiffness in his right knee from a bullet he had taken in 1871. He had been sheriff of Caldwell Crossing for 11 years. He was not famous. He was not the kind of lawman that dime novels were written about. He was the other kind, the kind that showed up every day, did the work, and went home to an empty house. The town respected Earl Briggs the way people respect a solid fence. They didn't think about it much until they needed it. It was a Tuesday in October when Tom Riley rode into Caldwell Crossing like something was chasing him. He burst through the sheriff's office door and sat down, breathing hard. "Sheriff," he said, "the Dolan gang is coming." Earl set his coffee cup down slowly. He knew the name. Everyone in Kansas knew the name. Wade Dolan had started as a cattle rustler, graduated to robbery, and acquired a reputation for violence that went beyond what was necessary for the work. He rode with 9 men, and they had left a trail of burned homesteads and empty bank safes from the Oklahoma Territory to the Nebraska border. 3 sheriffs had tried to stop them in 2 years. 2 were dead. The third had resigned and moved to St. Louis. "When?" Earl asked. "My father heard them say tomorrow," Tom said. "Noon, maybe before." Earl looked out the window at the quiet street, then back at Tom. "You did right coming to me," he said. "Go home. Stay with your family." "What are you going to do, Sheriff?" Earl picked up his coffee cup again. "My job," he said. That evening, Earl called a meeting with the town council in the back room of the Dusty Boot. He laid out what he knew simply. The Dolan gang, 10 men, tomorrow, the bank. He watched their faces as he spoke. Franklin Cobb, who owned the general store, went pale. The lawyer began tapping his fingers nervously. The banker said nothing at all. "We need to wire the U.S. Marshals," said Cobb. "Closest marshal is in Wichita," Earl said. 2 days' ride. One by one he asked them to stand with him, and one by one, in different ways, with different reasons and different amounts of shame, they said no. The blacksmith said his wife was expecting their 3rd child. The livery brother said 10 men was 10 men, and they weren't paid to die. The doctor said he was a doctor, not a fighter. Earl didn't blame them. Fear is real. The love of life is real. The Dolan gang was real. He walked back to his office in the dark, sat down behind his desk, and looked at the star pinned to his chest. 11 years he had worn it. He opened the desk drawer and took out his spare ammunition, began loading. Earl thought about Clara, who had always said that the badge was just tin, and that the man wearing it was what mattered. He thought about his son in Colorado. He thought about the wheat farmers with their deposits in the bank. The women crossing the street in the morning. Old Pete Henderson and his broom. He was 56 years old and his knee ached in the cold. He wrote a letter to his son. Not a goodbye letter, but one that said the things that needed saying. That he was proud of him. That he thought about his mother every day. He sealed it and left it on the desk. Then he went outside and waited. He was alone, but he had made a decision that no amount of mathematics could undo. Somebody had to stand. Morning came hard and bright. A Kansas sky so blue it seemed painted on, the air cold and sharp enough to taste. Earl was up before the sun. By 9 o'clock, the main street of Caldwell Crossing was empty as a church on a Monday. The bank was closed. The general store was shuttered. Even the Dusty Boot had its doors pulled too. Earl walked the empty street alone. He checked his rifle, a Winchester, well kept, his pistol, a Colt single-action Army that had been with him since 1873. Then he stood in the middle of the street and thought. 10 men, He was one. The numbers were not encouraging. But Earl Briggs had spent 56 years learning that the outcome of a thing was not always determined by its mathematics. He had seen small men beat large ones. He spent the next 2 hours not building barricades, but having conversations, going to the people that no one in Caldwell Crossing thought to count. He went to Agnes Cooper, a woman who ran the laundry and who had lost her husband to outlaws in Missouri 7 years ago, and who could shoot a rifle better than any man in town. He put her on the roof of the general store with her Winchester. He went to Miguel, the quiet barman from Sonora who had spent 3 years with the rurales in Mexico and knew exactly what to do with a shotgun at close range. He spoke to old Pete Henderson, the 63-year-old barber who walked with a cane but had been a sharpshooter in a traveling show. He spoke to Sarah Doyle, a young widow with quiet fury in her eyes, who agreed without hesitation, and Thomas, the 17-year-old stable boy who was not yet old enough to be afraid the way adults are afraid, and who could put a rifle shot where he meant it at 200 yards. 6 people, including Earl, against 10 outlaws. Still not good mathematics, but they had surprise, they had position, and they were fighting for something real. At 10 minutes past noon, they came. Earl heard them before he saw them. The sound of many horses, a low rumble that grew until it filled the street. 10 riders appeared at the north end of town, unhurried, the way men ride when they're not expecting trouble. Wade Dolan was at the front, tall in the saddle, lean and dark, black hat, black coat, pale eyes moving over the empty street with professional interest. He raised his hand. The group stopped. Then Earl stepped out of his office doorway and walked to the center of the road, boots raising small puffs of dust, badge catching the noon sun, and stopped. He looked at 10 mounted men with the same expression he used when waiting for someone to make a decision. Dolan looked at him. One man, 56 years old, a tin star. He smiled. "Sheriff," he said, "you lost?" "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Earl said. Dolan looked up and down the empty street. "Seems your town doesn't agree with you." "My town is fine," Earl said. "You boys need to turn around and ride back the way you came." Several of the men behind Dolan laughed, the small, dismissive kind that are worse than any other. "There's 10 of us, old man," Dolan said. "I can count," Earl said. Earl reached into his coat pocket. Dolan's hand moved toward his gun, but Earl did not draw a weapon. He pulled out a piece of paper. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, in the middle of the street. "This is a federal warrant," he said, "signed by Judge Harrison in Wichita for the arrest of Wade Dolan and 9 associates on charges of robbery, arson, and murder in the 1st degree." Dolan stared. "You're going to read me a piece of paper?" "I'm serving you lawfully," Earl said. "Wade Dolan, you and your men are under arrest. Dismount. Drop your weapons." Silence. Then Dolan laughed. "Kill him," he said. 3 things happened at once. A shot fired at Earl, went wide as he moved behind a barrel and drew his Colt. From the roof of the general store, Agnes Cooper's Winchester cracked. The shooter knocked from his horse. From the Dusty Boots' second-floor window, Miguel's shotgun roared. From the barber shop, Pete Henderson's rifle sang. From the alley, Sarah Doyle and Thomas held their positions. Wade Dolan found himself in the middle of a crossfire he had not seen coming, in a town he had assumed was empty. When it was over, the street was quiet again. 4 of Dolan's men were down. 3 had turned and ridden hard out of town the moment the crossfire started. Men who rob for a living are not prepared to die for it. 2 had surrendered. And Wade Dolan himself, who had fought with cold professionalism, was sitting against the wall of the jail with his hands tied, a graze across his left forearm, looking at Earl with an expression that had moved past anger into something more complicated. Earl checked his people first. Agnes Cooper had a powder burn on her right hand, nothing serious. Miguel had a cut above his eye from flying glass. Pete Henderson was reloading his rifle with unhurried precision. Sarah Doyle was untouched. The men who had gone toward her position had turned and run, apparently finding her stillness in that window more frightening than the gunfire. Thomas, the stable boy, was pale and shaking. Earl clapped him on the shoulder. "You did a man's work today," he said. "A man's pay will follow." Earl crouched down in front of Dolan, slowly, with the negotiation his knee required, and looked at the man. Dolan's pale eyes were steady. "One man," he said finally. "That's what I thought you were." "I was," Earl said, "and then I asked for help." Dolan considered that. Those weren't gunfighters. That woman on the roof, the old man with the rifle? No, Earl said. They were just people. People who live here. Why did those ones help you? Earl stood up slowly. Because they had reasons to, he said simply. Later, Franklin Cobb, the store owner who had refused to fight, came out of his house and stopped when he saw Earl. "Sheriff, I should have." "Yes," Earl said, "not unkindly, just plainly, you should have." He walks on. Agnes was wrapping her hand. Miguel had found a broom and was sweeping broken glass. Pete Henderson sat on his bench outside the barber shop, rifle across his knees, looking at the street with quiet satisfaction. Sarah Doyle stood in her doorway and looked at Earl. "Next time, ask me first," she said, and went inside. Earl almost smiled. The U.S. Marshals arrived 2 days later and took Wade Dolan and his men north to Wichita. Dolan was convicted on 4 counts and sentenced to 20 years. The town of Caldwell Crossing changed in small ways after that Tuesday in October. The church bell rope was replaced. Someone, nobody knew exactly who, hung a new one. The bell rang on Sunday for the first time in 2 years, clear and steady. Agnes Cooper's laundry business expanded. People who had taken their washing elsewhere suddenly found the local option more convenient. Nobody said this was related to what she had done from the roof of the general store. But everyone understood that it was. Miguel, behind the bar of the Dusty Boot, found that his customers talked to him differently. Not much differently, but enough. Pete Henderson got the rocking chair he had wanted for years. His wife bought it for him the week after the fight. Thomas, the stable boy, saved his pay until he had enough for a horse of his own. And Sarah Doyle remained who she was, which was enough. Earl Briggs stayed. Still there the following spring, and the spring after that. His knees still ached in the cold. His mustache got grayer. His son came from Colorado in the summer of 1880. The silver hadn't come in, but the boy had grown into a man who wanted to see his father. One evening, sitting on the step of the jail in the long summer light, his son asked him about that Tuesday in October. "People always want to know how you face something like that alone," his son said. "How you find the courage." "I wasn't alone," Earl said. "You walked out into that street alone." "I did," Earl said. "But before I walked out, I asked, and some people said yes. That's all courage really is, I think. It's asking, and sometimes enough people say yes." His son looked at him. And if they hadn't, if nobody had said yes, Earl considered that honestly. "Then I'd have walked out anyway," he said, "because somebody has to." The summer light lay long and bold across the street of Caldwell Crossing. The bell in the church rang the hour, clear and